Guess who's back?
Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about the 2021 NFL Draft. I think both of our almost favorite events, not related to the games. I mean, I in all honesty, I probably get more excited for this than I do the games. But anyway, the Cowboys are picking 10th overall, and there's been a lot of news and reports. Who are they going to pick? Blah, 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 blah. We're going to narrow it down. We're not going to make 20 different videos about it because it has been narrowed down. I think there's really only like... at most, maybe you could say 4 paths. We're going to talk about 3 of them. I'll mention the 4th at the end. But everybody knows the players' names. Everybody knows who's going to be there, basically, or who has the possibility of being there. Everybody has that favorite person they want. But today, we have narrowed it down to 3 players. Yeah.
There's been a lot of juggling been going on recently. This has probably been the most active we've ever had pre-draft, leading up to a draft. So it's made it a lot funner, and I think draft night's probably gonna be one of the most fun nights in a long time.
Well, I mean, last year was pretty fun.
No, this one, because of what's happened so much before. So much has happened pre-draft.
Well, let's see. What are the 3 players? So I narrowed it down to 3 players, and they fall into 3 distinctive categories for me. One, it's offensive line. 2nd, offensive luxury pick, or 3, defensive talent. Again, the Cowboys are picking at 10th overall. That is a premier pick in the first round. Not very many times do teams pick in the top 10 unless you're, pretty bad every year. But the 3 players that I've narrowed it down to are Oregon's Penei Sewell, the left tackle, Florida's Kyle Pitts, the tight end, who a lot of people know and have been talking about, and Alabama's corner, Patrick Surtain II. These 3 players have been mocked to the Cowboys different ways. Some of them less likely of happening, some of them more likely of happening. But I don't think you can say that this one player or another won't be at a pick after what happened last year. Anything can happen. Somebody always slides. So there is a reality where any one of these 3 players, or all 3 of these players, are available to pick at number 10 whenever the day comes on April 29th. So today, we're going to talk about those 3 players, rank them 1 through 3, how we would pick them, or in what order, and then give our reasons behind that. So we'll start at number 3. RJ, go ahead and tell everyone what your 3rd player in that grouping would be.
Defensive back. Defensive back would be my 3rd grouping, and it's based off the other 2 more reasoning, which you'll see why when I explain the other 2, but also just because there's, I feel like if Dallas does go with the other 2 that are obviously arranged, which would be the offensive luxury and the offensive lineman, then I really feel like they're, with the amount of picks that they have, they're going to move up and get who they want in the 2nd round, or at the top of the 2nd round, or even going back into the 1st round, and getting a guy could be a difference maker, whether it be like Asante Samuel Jr., the kid out of Northwestern, Newsome, right? Greg Newsome, who I feel is a lot like Byron Jones. And then also, you have guys like the safety out of UCF.
Richie Grant.
Bring me in the second. And those guys, those guys like that. There's other guys there to shore up the secondary. And we all saw what happened last year with Okudah. Cornerback is probably one of, if not the hardest outside of quarterback position to transition to in the NFL. You could look like you have me on record saying I felt like Okudah had all pro written all over him as far as technique and stuff, his limited penalties and everything going into last year's draft, and he was not good at all last year. Maybe could have done with Patricia scheme and stuff, but that's more so. That's my tell for me as far as the defensive back position goes. Do I think, obviously one like Surtain, or to me Horn, I like Horn better personally, could come in there and be really good? Yeah, I do. But there's more of a worry for me with that position there based off of recency.
So I think this might be we haven't talked about how we rank these before we started recording, but this might be the only spot where we agree. But I also am going to put cornerback, defensive back in the third in this grouping because of the quality of the two other players. Now, granted, either of these other two players may not even be there at 10 on the day of the draft, which would completely change it. But to preface it all, I should have said this before, I'd be happy with any of these three players. I think they're all three great players. I'd be happy for them to be Dallas Cowboys. But if those are the three you're picking from, then I'm going to put cornerback last, and it doesn't have anything to do with Patrick Surtain. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a guy that you put on the field, and I don't think you're going to have to worry about him. He's very technically sound. You know what you're going to get from him. But like RJ said, the depth of cornerback is much like the depth of wide receiver from last year. There's a bunch of guys that, if you're throwing darts at a dartboard, there's a bunch of them available that will be there in the second round, much more than there were last year in the second round, especially at cornerback. A couple of guys from Georgia, like RJ said, Newsom, who may be a first rounder. There's a kid, Aaron Robinson from UCF. He may be closer to third round. I mean, you could go all the way into the third round. There's going to be defensive backs available. So this doesn't have much to do with the player specifically, but it has to do with the position in this particular draft. And then even if all the guys were healthy, and I'm talking about Caleb Farley including with this, there wasn't a clear-cut true number one guy, and there wasn't a Jeff Okudah in this class. There wasn't that top 5 cornerback prospect that you were going to jump up for joy if they were to pick him. So it's just a different talent pool. So let's get into the second. I'll start this one off because I think I'm going to be different from RJ. My second would be Kyle Pitts, the offensive luxury pick. Now, everything coming about Kyle Pitts is generational player, which probably gets thrown around too much. But, I mean, there's no doubt that the guy is a freak of nature and he can add something to your offense, especially this Cowboys offense that you don't have. People will say, hey, well, you already have Dalton Schultz and you're going to have Jarwin coming back. Those guys aren't Kyle Pitts. There are not many people. There aren't anybody in this league like him, literally, when it comes to his wingspan. In the past 20 years, nobody tested identical to him or basically near him when it comes to that. In the big players coming out, production is there, one-on-one, going up against anybody. Linebackers aren't going to be able to keep up with him. Safeties and corners aren't going to body up with him. He's just as much of a defensive mismatch as you can ask for. But when it comes to this Cowboys offense, there's so much investment on that side of the ball already, and there are already so many mouths to feed to me that how much of a difference is a guy like that going to make? Is it going to be negligible? Like how much space is there for him? If you look at what Schultz did last year, now I did say this. Yes, they aren't the same players, but the production was there. He scored 6 touchdowns. He made critical plays in games where you needed him to. I think in the red zone is where he would really make a big difference for this offense. But I don't know, man. Tight end is that crapshoot position that even if you take the best one, especially in the first round, you really don't know if it's going to work out for them. Some of the best ones in the league, Travis Kelce, he's basically the number one in that offense. Tyreek Hill's a really good player, but I think that the offense goes through Kelce. Darren Waller for the Raiders, I mean, that offense really goes through him, and they use him in a bunch of unique ways that I don't know if there's really room for the Cowboys to use Pitts in the same way in this offense because of how many weapons they already have. So whenever you have a tight end that's going to be that top tier guy like a Kittle, like a Kelce, like a Waller, they are the offense. I don't know if Pitts is going to be that necessarily this year, next year. I don't know. I mean, there are some moving pieces that could be happening in the next 2 years with this Cowboys offense. But to me, this draft and the next couple drafts are all about right now. What are we doing right now to push us over the edge and get us to the Super Bowl? Because those core pieces are there, but they won't be there for very long. So, RJ, who would your number 2 be? Okay,
my number 2, after I'm done with this, I'll follow into my number 1 to kind of build a bridge for a transition as to my reasoning. My number 2 is Kyle Pitts. It's Kyle Pitts because I think with the Gallup situation, a lot of people like to refer to Gallup in this situation. And I think a guy like Gallup, I think he'll want to stay. I think with the salary cap and other things opening up, and I'll get back to the draft point, but I think a guy like Gallup will want to stay. And if he doesn't, at the end of the day, other weapons are breeded in the second and third round every single year in the draft, consistently and constantly. For a guy like Kyle Pitts, though, yes, he is generational. He doesn't have nobody's had a longer wingspan than him in the past 20 years. I mean, Mekhi Becton, the left tackle that was taken last year by the Jets, he has a longer wingspan than him, and that is just outrageously. That's just insane to think about. Just go watch Mekhi Becton and go look him up. He's crazy.
She's a freaking massive human being.
Massive. At the end of the day, Sal was talking about, as far as Kelsey, Waller, and guys like that, how the offense runs to them. And I feel like Pitts could be better than all of them in the beginning of in year one. Like I truly and honestly believe that he could make that big of an impact from straight away. Also, what was I gonna say? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Damn it.
Well, while you gather that and think about it for a second, I just want to say this is super, super surprising, because if you know RJ, he's a Florida Gators fan, and I think Kyle Pitts will probably be the best thing that they've ever produced since Tim Tebow, and Tim Tebow wasn't a good NFL. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As far as hype-wise. But, so I'm very surprised that this is number 2.
The way our offense runs, I feel like with a guy like Schultz and Jarwin, listen, Jarwin's coming off a torn ACL, and Schultz, what I'm gonna say is the way our offense runs, and with the vast amount of volume that it has for each and every individual. Now, would you like that for it to happen, for each individual to have that much volume? No, you'd like to get up on the team, and you like to pound the ball away and waste the clock at the end when your win probability goes up. But I feel like those numbers are more like a guarantee, like that's going to happen because of the offense. Now, what happens when you throw a guy like Pitts in there that with an average guy like Schultz and Jarwin, where they were going to score 6 touchdowns? What's to say that's not 10 with Pitts? You know what I mean? That's what I'm getting at. And look, I love Pitts. I'd absolutely go crazy if they got him. Now, the reason for my number 1 being an offensive lineman, Sewell, or personally, I think Slater would, because he seems a little bit more versatile. But let's stay on the offensive lineman, because I've seen it happen before. I've seen it with Zach. That's probably one of the safest and most. Here, let's draft a guy here, and he's going to be an All-Pro for the next 10 years, like a guarantee. And it's going to shore up your core. The most important part of your team, your offensive lineman, the guys that are protecting your quarterback, is going to shore up those guys for the next, for sure, 5 to 7 years. Mm-hmm. While he's there, and it's going to help them build another core when guys like Tyron and Martin have to transition out. Now, hopefully that's a little later on down the line.
3 years.
Yeah, but it's going to happen. He's going to be that guy there that keeps the centerpiece going. And that's the reason why I have it at number 1. Because I can look at all the flashy plays and the amazing prospect that Pitts is, and how I think he's a generational talent, and he absolutely could come in here and just bust the league wide open, and just this offense could put up literally 40 to 50 points a game. But at the end of the day, the offensive lineman those are the guys that actually make the NFL world go around and keep your quarterback healthy and intact, and they're the oil to the engine. Like they're everything to the team on the offensive side of the ball. And like I said, with Zach Martin, we've seen it, and why would that be a bad thing?
I'm very surprised, very, very surprised that we're gonna agree on this. But all this has to do, again, quality of player, but then secondarily, I believe in the quarterback, right? But I want the quarterback on the field. This is all about protecting my investment. So the Cowboys have invested in Dak Prescott. I'm going to do everything possible to protect him now. You've already given him the weapons. The weapons are there. There's no doubt about that. They were scoring like hell with what they had last year already. But what failed them? Protection. And this guy, Sewell, in this case, Slater's a really good player too. He could be available. I'd be happy with that pick as well. But Sewell, if you were to take last year's offensive line class before last year and put him into it, he'd probably still be the first offensive lineman taken. And that was a class where there's some really, really high level Tristan Wirfs probably going to be a Pro Bowl type, like a Zach Martin type, except he's playing right tackle. There's some really, really good players on there. Sewell's ability to recover and the unnatural strength that he has. I mean, the guy was 19 playing and showing some unreal strength playing left tackle for Oregon, protecting a mobile quarterback in Justin Herbert, one of the best offenses, and going to get some premier edge rushers. I value the talent of an offensive lineman, especially if you're picking at 10. I mean, an offensive lineman like that, you pick in the top 5. If he slides to you all the way at 10, you're solidifying the offensive line this year because he'll probably slide into left guard, a spot that's been basically a rotating of guys. Hey, hopefully this guy comes through. Well, now you're going to have a top 10 pick that's going to go in there, and he will come through. And then let's just say, look, Tyron Smith, he's one of my favorite players on the Cowboys, if not my favorite player. But there's no denying that he has had injuries almost every year the last 4 years. So if he were to go down for a couple games, like people will say is expected to, well then, hey, you kick out your future at left guard, put Sewell at left tackle, and then you put back in one of those starter capable guys at left guard, and it's almost like you never skipped a beat. Yeah. And the protection's still going to be there. I just value a left tackle more than almost any other position whenever you're picking other than quarterback.
What was this interesting stat I saw, though, just to add to offensive linemen, how important it is? I think Dallas has one of the only teams where like 2 or 3 guys of their backups have more than 10 starts, and they're the only team that has that. And that's vital, guys. Especially when you have guys in front of you like a Tyron that goes down during the season, or just in general when you need offensive lineman depth. I mean, go look at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it's all about consistency too with the offensive line, because I'll give the guys credit who came in. I think Steele played good at times. I think Knight played good at times. Mm-hmm. The thing is, though, you gotta have an even level of play so the offense can flow. Mm-hmm. You can't have a guy getting beat to hell one game and then, hey, he plays pretty good. You're going to have him be at least middle of the road. And if you take a top 10 pick like Sewell, I mean, he's going to be more than middle of the road.
We saw when the offensive line was at its best in 2016 with Free. The thing with him is, he'd lack in the passing game, but boy, he'd run grade you like crazy. Mm-hmm. And that was the thing. Like, sure, he'd have bad games. He'd have bad games in the passing game, but nowhere near, like in the run game, you could always count on him. So. And
another thing is, part of this investment on offense, which is, we've said before, was probably the wrong investment, and many will agree with us, was into the running back. But a pick for the offensive line in here would help that investment out. Yeah. I mean, they're it's a very symbiotic relationship between the play of running back and the play of offensive line. If the offensive line is not playing good, the running back is most likely not going to play good. We've already seen 2 years of that with Zeke. If you improve this offensive line, maybe you'll be able to squeeze out that last bit of good juice those last 2 years, because that's most likely how much longer you're going to have to keep him on this roster until you can make some decisions with him, and get the most out of him.
And to add to the reasoning for my number one, which we were the same throughout the whole way through. I feel like you're on the edge right there of what you were with 2016, because you could come back and listen. This defense isn't going to be as bad as last year. Like I could promise you that. If they are, then I'll drink the season away, dude. They're going to be middle of the road more than likely, especially with a coach like Dan Quinn, and that's really all they have to be. So you go to that, and you go back to 2016 with the offensive line, right? Let's say you're trying to replicate that in the way of just not the type of way your offense function, but in how well it could function with that running game. So you draft a guy like Slater or Sewell, and you throw him in there, and you have that there. But this time in 2021, you have a grown-up Dak Prescott, and you have the weapon of Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. And that's just like, that just gives you so much more to fall back on.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the weapons from 2016, it was 1 year away from washed Dez, an injured Cole Beasley, an old as hell Jason Witten, Terrence Williams, who never learned how to catch with his hands. Like it's completely different.
And that's where my mindset is, and I think that's at the end of the day, I think that's the best way that I can put my reasoning for why number one is the number one.
To piggyback off of what you said, a lot of people are going to say, well, why the heck would you spend on offense, blah, blah, blah. I believe you build strength on strength, okay? If that's the best player that is on the board, take the best player. That's what they did last year.
Guys,
if they didn't follow that, they'd have Chase on this year.
I feel like what not enough people are talking about also is, let's say I kind of wanted to do what they should do, what they'll probably do, and what we want them to do, right? But I think what we want them to do and what they probably will do is lines up probably at the same, probably lines up the same.
I hope so.
Yeah, but because not a lot of people are talking about, let's say Surtain and Pitts are there. Who's behind us? Tell me who's behind us. The Eagles and the Giants.
Oh yeah, right behind.
Right behind us, the Eagles and the Giants. So who are you taking? Pitts. Okay, there you go. I mean,
you don't want the division to have that chance at a generational type player.
Exactly.
Plus, we have seen what the Eagles have done with a really good tight end, and this guy's probably better than that. But like I was saying, to piggyback, what I'm going to say about the defense is, I'm not going to assume middle of the road. Let's just assume the worst. That's how I've always been. Hey, prepare for the worst. Let's just say they are the same defense they are this year. They were this past year, one of the worst. Well, shit, I don't care, because I expect this offense to go out and put up 40, and then, hey, maybe as the year goes along, just like this past year, they'll get better. And look, if you take offense with the first-round pick, you can pick defense with every other pick after this. They have 9 more, and there's a lot of defensive talent.
Guys, the great thing is, there's not only one round in this draft.
Yeah.
Just like it's been forever.
And they have 2 in the third. So let's just say
you pick
your second. You could package a third, move up to the second. There's a player that you really want, because at the end of the day, it's about the quality of the player, not the number of the players. You go up and get the player that's going to make a big difference on your team.
And let me throw in something. I would not be mad at them for giving up next year's first to really go up and get somebody that's going to start right away on the defensive side of the ball if they were to go offense in the first round. Because at this point, with the contract you just signed and everything with Dak, and you're in go mode. You're in. This is another window that you have to go and do something. Plus, if you look at the rest of the division, I'll say right now, there's no way in hell and reason, and I'm not saying this based off of that because I'm a Cowboys fan or anything. I'd be saying this if I was just an unbiased analyst, just in the neutral middle of the road. There is no reason this team should not win this division this year or the next 2 or 3 years, as long as these guys as long as these other teams don't have a quarterback. So that's the way you're looking at this draft, and that's the way you need to look at it. So if you want to go get another guy that you feel can start right away and make an impact after your first pick, then you go and get that guy. And I don't mind giving up a next year's first or something like that.
I don't know who that would be, but I mean, it is all about you're trying to win now. Mm-hmm. The window's open, and I agree. And this, I'm beyond the division. That's an expectation to me. That's what, just like the offense, the expectation is for them to go out and score points. The division, that's already an expectation to me. I'm looking at the conference, mm-hmm. and even beyond that. I mean, and I can tell you, I mean, every team wants to win the Super Bowl, but there are a handful of teams that every year the expectation is we have what it takes to get to
and let's I'm gonna go ahead and I'll eat some crow on the Rams. We sat up here and we thought let's shit's done with, kind of like, but at the end of the day, they did, with a guy like Goff, they did make it to the divisional round, and like McVay, and they've pretty much come out and said maybe sometimes draft picks are a little overrated, and what they're doing now is they're constantly just wanting to win now. And who's to say that sometimes that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
They're taking it to the extreme, whereas the Cowboys, they've been one of the most conservative when it comes to free agency and the draft period. So it's a happy medium that they got to find. Mm-hmm. And the Cowboys last year, I mean, they surprised a lot of people, but that's why I don't know if they're on the best player available board yet, because whenever CeeDee Lamb's there at 17, that's just like a flashing light in front of you. A Sewell at 10, that's a flashing light in front of you. There's no guarantee that flashing light's going to be there. I mean, it could be where, hey, it's just J.C. Horn and Micah Parsons are the 2 players that are on the board in front of you. Then what do? Do they trade back? Do they just stick and take the corner? That's whenever it becomes tough, pulling straws and picking players. That's typically what it is. There's not going to always be that flashing light for you. So it'll be a test.
I feel like, to me, it's definitely going to be a draft where there's a Darnold, Beckham, or Martin there, as far as not position wise, but somebody,
the potential ones.
someone is going to be there at 10. That is definitely, you're either going to say, well, this is obvious for us, it's a position of need, and obviously it's a really, really good player, or it's going to be, this guy's really good and we can't pass up on him.
Yeah. And the fourth option that I mentioned at the beginning, and that's always trade back. Trade back, I've always wanted them to trade back. They rarely do it. But, that is a possibility. Say a quarterback slides, you could really pump up the price to a premium and get some picks.
You could definitely do that. And I would say if that ends up happening, you get picks for next year, then you just use that to package for this year. To do what I was saying earlier as far as win now mode.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what I've seen also is, really, what does a lot of first round draft picks do for you? It creates eventually contract conflicts, and you have to extend them at the same time, and I think it creates a lot more problems than what you would think creates a lot more solutions at the time, especially because it takes some time for those guys to develop.
Yeah, at certain positions. Well, I'm very surprised that we agreed, but hey, we're on board with the same mindset going into the end of this month. It's going to be very exciting. We appreciate you watching this video. If you enjoy Dallas Cowboys or NFL content, please stay tuned to the channel, subscribe, like, comment. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time.
Yo, I ain't here for the money, I ain't here for the fame. Though it might be nice to own a jet plane, I'ma do it all for you. Come along and see it's true, but the